Hello there, I'm Oliver. My father, he was Mr. Gark, but you can call me Oli.
I'm so sorry that I was not your mother.
London is a playground for minted Russians. It has been for a long time. And it's also a laundry for dirty money and dirty reputations. That's why we call it money laundering. Boris Johnson has responded to the invasion of Ukraine with a punitive sanctions regime against Russia. And it's a start, but it's small vodka in the rubles refinery that is modern-day London, a city affectionately known in the US State Department as Londongrad for the last 20 years. In fact, the UK has turned a blind eye to dirty Russian money being laundered through London, and that's a direct quote from a report by our own Parliament in 2018. While the money oligarchs invest in Britain is notoriously hard to track, the National Crime Agency reckons money laundering costs our economy £100 billion a year. And the reason for that is the majority of money that enters and leaves Russia and comes to the UK does so via offshore tax havens. Remember the Panama and Pandora Papers? Those places.
I'd paid income tax on the dividends.
Over the past decade, £68 billion has poured from Russia into Britain's offshore satellites, such as the British Virgin Islands, the Channel Islands, and Gibraltar. That's 7 times more money than came directly from Russia to the UK. Another £94 billion flowed into Cyprus, another tax haven. This wealth is not actually in the offshore centres. It's just registered there so as to obscure its origins. One bank decided to take a forensic look at this. In 2015, Deutsche Bank analysed discrepancies between money entering and leaving the UK, concluding that since the early 1990s, £133 billion had arrived here without ever being publicly accounted for. Deutsche didn't look into how the money was getting to the UK, but if they'd wanted to, they'd only have needed to walk down the corridor. Less than 2 years later, Deutsche Bank traders in Moscow were caught manipulating the stock market to secretly move £7.5 billion of their clients' money out of Russia. They were fined close to 500 million quid as a result. Russian companies have also been able to raise large sums in sales on the London Stock Exchange. Russian energy company, Gazprom, was able to raise £656 million in a recent bond sale on the London Stock Exchange, some of which were bought by UK investors. You know, Gazprom. The energy firm, half owned by the Kremlin. Another energy firm, N Plus Group, at the time of its initial public offering on the London Stock Exchange, was controlled by Oleg Deripaska, a long-time associate of Vladimir Putin. The latest sanctions legally prevent this from happening again. But how do you remove the eggs already baked into a cake? The other major outlet for Russian money is the London property market. This is Belgrave Square, or Red Square as it's sometimes known, given the number of oligarchs that have owned property here. The previously mentioned Putin pal Deripaska owns number 5. The late oligarch Boris Berezovsky, well, he owns several flats at number 26. Roman Abramovich's gaff is just around the corner. We're in central London, and yet, you'll notice, I'm basically the only person here. The anti-corruption organisation Transparency International has identified £5 billion worth of property bought in the UK with what it says is suspicious wealth, 1/5 of which has come from Russia. Most of these properties are held in offshore tax havens, and half of them are within 3 miles of Buckingham Palace, and that's thought to just be a fraction of the true total. Russian opposition activists estimate that 1 in 10 houses in central London are owned by offshore companies, and their total value is thought to be £122 billion. In the borough of Kensington and Chelsea alone, some 6,000 properties are registered in the name of anonymously owned companies. And the official salaries of the oligarchs who own these multi-million pound homes? Usually about 100 grand. I wonder where they get the money from. As well as owning mansions, oligarchs from the former Soviet Union own football clubs and newspapers. And they send their children to the poshest schools and cozy up to our political parties with donations. Oligarchs are some of the heaviest spenders on British law firms and PR consultants. MP Layla Moran recently used parliamentary privilege to name some of these individuals, because if anyone else does, they get sued for libel. A report by Parliament's Intelligence Committee in 2020 concluded that London was a laundromat for tainted Russian money. Love it when a few of these come out in the wash. A separate report found that this helped Putin subvert the international rules-based system, or prevent the tanks from rolling into Kiev. And none of this takes into account the £2 million in donations from Russian-linked donors to the Conservative Party since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. which might explain why he's done nothing about it. The truth is, no one can. It's almost impossible to stop, because the unforgivably rich will always be able to afford the most expensive of accountants to circumvent the rules.